in emergency situations and in situations in which the homeowner wishes to protect property values, the removal or relocation of a protected tree or trees would require approval by a government agency only after an arborist or registered professional forester determines that the tree is hazardous and presents an immediate danger of collapse and poses an imminent threat to the public safety or general welfare. This process could be financially Prendergast, 2020 President, and Heather Bergen, 2020 Government Relations Committee.
Thanks so much, Ms. Kristen. Tiana, Meredith, y'all have any thoughts generally on the ordinance as it's proposed?
I wasn't at the last meeting, so I did take time to read through that and also then read the minutes that you guys discussed it last week. And it looks like you were tied, but I think this letter from the realtors really lays that out quite clearly, some of those hurdles. And I certainly live in an area with lots of redwood trees in my neighborhood. So I could see that being a concern for many of my neighborhood residents if trying to remove trees when they've done that in the past. Yeah, I think it seems pretty intense about having to get arborists involved, and sometimes a tree just needs to come down with a little more ease, I think.
Tiana, any thoughts?
One, it's better if I keep my video off. I think that the Zoom meeting goes more smoothly on my end. Just otherwise, I would show my camera. But I'm in agreement with this and with my fellow commissioners. As you know, I don't think we should be encroaching on people's personal property, and that's just a fundamental right, and what makes being a property owner really awesome, in our country. So, my consideration was, instead of just flat out denying this, and it seemed pretty heated in our last meeting, if there was suggestions that we could make, so for ease and, just right away for this and before just shooting it down, I wanted some more time to think about it as well. So that's just kind of where my thoughts lie on it before just, asking to make a movement just to, ex-nay this out.
Yep. Thanks. I had very similar thoughts, Tiana. As you did, one of the concerns we had at our last meeting was public input, and so I attached the proposed ordinance with just a real brief summary of the highlights that I created. I put it on several Facebook. Well, I sent it to the Humboldt Association of Realtors, of which I am a member, and I put it on my personal Facebook page, my real estate Facebook page. I presented it at a couple other kind of public venues in a more informal manner and stuff. And the feedback I got was very consistent, and the citizens I talked to thought it was pretty far overreach as well. But like you, Tiana, I'm wondering if we can take it and tweak it. So I don't know if you guys will entertain me here, but I've got some proposals I'd like to throw at you if you think they would work, and we could make the outline of this work. I'd sure like to throw it at you. So I'm moving initially on page 11 of our packet, I think. It's the tree removal ordinance under paragraph A, purpose. 1, 2, 3, fourth line down. The sentence reads, much of Eureka is forested with stands of redwoods and other trees that are a distinctive part of the city's history and character, and every effort should be made to preserve and protect these trees while protecting the public safety. I would like to propose that we add a comma there, remove and, supporting residential development, add a comma, and then add the phrase, and protecting private property rights, period. So that our purpose would be preserving and protect our trees, protecting the public safety, supporting residential development, and protecting private property rights. Y'all think that would be a good thing? Does anybody think that would be a good thing to add to this document?
Jeff, I don't think that would be a cure for this document. I think my suggestion would be, if you really want to do something, let's just do a 2-sentence ordinance. Trees over 36 inches need a city permit to be removed. Any hazardous tree just needs a professional logger to supervise its removal.
I'll entertain that as a motion right after everyone refuses to second mine. If I don't get a second, mine dies. Once, twice, dead. All right, Joe, you propose.
My proposal is any tree over 36 inches in the city requires a permit from the city to be removed, period. Any hazardous tree needs a professional logger to supervise its removal, period.
Okay, does anyone, and so you would, that would be the entirety of the code,
Yeah.
everything else would go away.
Well, actually, I left out one thing. Any hazardous tree does not require a permit, but does require a professional logger to supervise its removal. Any over 36 inches, that's what I'm saying. Any hazardous tree over 36 inches does not require a permit, but does need a professional logger to supervise its removal.
So if I understand that, you're proposing trees over 36 inches need a permit.
That's right.
Hazardous trees over 36 inches need to be taken down under the supervision of a professional logger.
That's right. That's it. 2 sentences.
Any trees under 36 inches do not need permits or loggers at all.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody want to second that motion?
Second that motion.
Rich is seconded. Any discussion on that motion?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
For confirmation, the motion includes any tree, not just any tree that's on a list that's in the code, but any tree, ornamental or otherwise, that's greater than
correct.
36 inches.
That's correct. Yeah.
And where is that measurement taken? There's no indication in the language.
But what was that?
Where is the 36-inch measurement taken? There's no indication.
Sorry. Okay. At breast height.
Okay.
And-
Different people have different sizes. How about if we say 4.5 feet?
All right, 4.5 feet, but also I wanted to also change that 36 inches wide, not including the bark. Because redwood trees have very thick bark. So,
How would you measure that?
well, you take a board, a little test board, and you estimate how deep the bark is on the 2 sides of the tree where you're measuring the diameter. That's how.
Okay. And then what is the definition of hazardous trees?
That's left up to the homeowner. I mean, basically, if the tree's leaning, you can see if they consider it a hazardous tree, and they're the homeowner or the property rights owner or the property owner, that's good enough. It just needs because it's a hazardous tree though, you do want to have a professional logger there to take it down so that the person doesn't kill themselves when they're taking down their hazardous tree.
And when you're saying professional logger, do you mean a registered professional forester?
I mean a professional logger, a guy who cuts trees professionally.
Is there a
what logger is.
credential we could reference, a licensed
Nope.
tree faller
Nope.
thing?
If the guy is a professional logger and he does it for pay, he's a professional. You can usually tell them they're always wearing those blue striped shirts.
And supervise its removal.
That's right.
What does
That's
that
right.
mean?
He can have helpers with him who are not professional loggers helping him cut the tree down.
How would we enforce that?
Well, Well, I guess, well, the tree's over 36 inches. Well, it's over, if it's over 36 inches, they're gonna need a permit. No, they won't need a permit because it's hazardous. No, that's true. How would you enforce that? Well,
And there's no definition of a tree permit, or there's no procedure for issuing one. There's no criteria for issuing one. Is it just the fact that it's over 36 inches?
That's right. Yeah, just it's over 36 inches. Needs a permit. Essentially, it's just for safety purposes. Okay, not for ornamental, not for climate change, nothing else. It's just to make sure that the city knows that a very large tree is going to be taken down at a certain spot on a certain date, and just to make sure everybody watches out, because that's 36-inch trees are pretty big.
So we've got Joe's moved, Rich is seconded. We're in the discussion portion. So Joe, it sounds like to me, in terms of Christian's question of enforcement, excuse me, a resident calls up to the city and says, hey, I've got a tree hanging over my house or hanging over the street. I'm afraid it's going to fall. What should I do? The city can say, you need to have a professional tree faller. Our code says you don't need a permit, but you have to have a professional tree faller supervise taking it down. Supervise could mean the professional tree faller does it himself, or the professional tree faller watches the homeowner do it to make sure that what he's doing is going to be safe. Do I understand you correct, Joe?
That's correct, yes.
Or similarly, if a neighbor sees a tree on someone else's property and it looks dangerous, then the neighbor calls City Hall, and City Hall says, well, the neighbor needs to take it down under the supervision of a professional tree faller.
That's right.
And so then the neighbor can go over and tell the property owner, and then property owner can call the city for confirmation, but that's the extent of the interaction.
That's right.
Police officer driving down the road, Eureka police officer sees a tree hanging over, it's looking dangerous. Then the police officer can knock on the door and say, hey, sir, you got a dangerous tree out here. I'm afraid it's going to fall and hurt someone. City code says you have to take that down, but it has to be under the supervision of a professional tree faller. Wouldn't need to call the City Hall at all.
That's true. There you go.
Okay. Any other discussion on this motion? Great questions, Kristen. Thanks.
Wait, I would like to, for clarification, I would like to rescind my second and hear what we're voting on.
No need to rescind your second for that. So Joe has moved that we replace this entire ordinance with 2 points. One is that trees that are 36 inches or wider in diameter at 4.5 feet off the ground inside the bark, trees that are 36 inches in diameter or larger require a tree permit from the city to be cut down. That hazardous trees of 36 inches or larger must be removed by the property owner under the supervision of a professional tree faller. Did I get that right, Joe?
That's right.
That's the motion.
I'm sorry, clarification, a hazardous tree that's over 36 inches?
Correct. Right, Joe?
What if it's
Yeah.
under?
Right. So in other words, if the hazardous tree is there, they don't need a permit from the city to take it down. They just need a professional forester to, they don't have time to go to the city and, pay the money and all that stuff. They just need to just get the tree down. That's
Okay.
But,
So
but if the hazardous tree is under 36 inches, do they have to be supervised by a professional tree faller?
no, they don't. Just like a tree underneath, any tree under 36 inches does not need a permit. And if it's hazardous, just take it down. They could take it down if they want, or they should take it down, but any tree under 36 inches does not need a professional faller to take it down.
Good discussion. Anybody else? Meredith, Tiana?
Well, I'm just wondering, is this going to be too vague? What's the feedback from the planning department as far as maybe things that need to be included that aren't being included?
I think those would go along the lines of my questions.
Vagueness does, I mean, it is super simple. I mean, it's pretty dang clear. Anything under 36 inches is property owners doing. Anything over 36 inches, either get a permit if it's not dangerous, or get a tree faller to supervise if it is dangerous. And if you're not sure, you're on your own.
I'm wondering why there was this protected tree section added in, and is there a reason that the trees need to be delineated
Mhm.
as far as protected versus unprotected or ornamental?
So
I
currently,
understand.
sorry,
My understanding, Kristen, is that that was an effort to accomplish the goal of preserving and protecting Eureka's, the distinctive trees, the trees that are a distinctive part of the city's history and character. We identified some species that fall into that category. Did I get that right, Kristen?
yes, currently the code has language that regulates the treatment of commercial trees, as they're called in the current code. Staff and council looked at that and kind of thought, we don't really want to regulate commercial trees. We want to actually do more to protect the trees that make, that give Eureka its character and make Eureka what it is. So that's where this came in. There were 12 types of trees that are included in the code right now. Following review of the draft ordinance by Keep Eureka Beautiful, they recommended the addition of 5 more types of trees, and staff had included those in the proposed amendment. Keep Eureka Beautiful also recommended a reduction from, well, currently the code says trees that are 3 feet in diameter. And on the list of commercial trees, you need to get a tree permit from the city to remove those trees. The proposed ordinance said protected trees, this list of 17 trees, and with a diameter of 16 inches or more required a tree permit. Keep Eureka Beautiful recommended that that number be increased to 2 feet in diameter, 24 inches. So that was also included in there.
And then I believe they added some species to the list as well.
Yeah, they added 5.
All right, any other discussion on this motion? I'm afraid, Joe, I'm supporting it. I think it's simple. I think it protects private property rights. I'm concerned city council's going to think it's too minimalistic, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
Me too. Thank you.
Anybody else have some comments? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. I think that was unanimous. Did you say aye, Rich?
Yes.
Excellent. That's unanimous then. All right, so that's the tree ordinance. Next item on our agenda
I
is,
was going to ask a question though, if the tree fell and no one was around, would anyone hear it?
now he tells his joke.
Yeah.
Next item on our agenda, thanks, Rich. Next item on our agenda is the Emergency Shelter Local Coastal Program Amendment. This is under new business. And if we can begin with a staff report, I think that's you, Kristen.
It is. Stand by. Let me get my PowerPoint open here.
All right.
Okay, can you see a emergency shelter slide?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
All right, thank you. So the Emergency Shelter Local Coastal Program Amendment has project numbers from 2017. It's text amendment 17-0002 and Local Coastal Program Amendment 17-0001. It's applicable to the coastal zone portion of the city. And the coastal zone is shown here in the colored parcels. So council adopted the ordinance on May 16th, 2017. And the Coastal Commission certified the amendments on October 13th, 2020, with modifications to remove references to Senate Bill 2 from the land use designations, to add an emergency shelter definition, to fix referencing errors, to remove the requirements for a discretionary local shelter permit, and also for unpaved open space, to modify the parking standard from requiring 1 space for every 8 residents to 0.25, 1/4 of 1 space for every 8 residents, excuse me. And to add safety standards to address potential contamination on contaminated sites. And the commission also added language to address environmental justice issues. Finally, they added emergency shelters to the Crowley site. And that modification is included in the Crowley site amendment, which is the next item on your agenda this evening. The suggested modifications must be adopted by the city council. However, the municipal code requires the planning commission to report on any proposed modifications prior to the council action. So that's what's here before you this evening. So staff recommends that the planning commission recommend the council adopt the modifications as certified by the Coastal Commission. And there is a recommended motion for your use on the screen there. And I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Commissioners, any questions for staff?
The part about the shelter not needing a permit, is that part of SB2 also?
It is. SB2 requires that we treat emergency shelters just like we would treat any other residential type of use. We don't require any permits, use permits, or anything for multifamily residential or single family residential. So we did remove that requirement that was in there.
And then in here it says have to identify at least 1 zone of sufficient capacity where emergency shelters are permitted by right. But we're kind of doing it on 3 zones. Is there a reason we need to do it on 3 zones instead of just the 1 zone? Is that correct?
So the original amendment proposed having the 3 zones, and so they've just carried through.
Okay. So we're kind of stuck with it, I guess, because that's
At this point in time, unfortunately, we are. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay, but it also mentions here the police do get to have a word in what's how the security is set up for these places. They have it's sort of like the marijuana guys. The police department has to sign off on the project.
Very similar, yes.
Okay.
And they still have to get building code, building permits, and those building permits go through fire and police and probably traffic, I would think also.
Yes, if they're going into an existing structure, they would need building permits most likely for a change of occupancy or for any modifications that they're going to make to the plan. If they're going into an open space, like for example, a parking lot like the one at West Washington and Coster, then they're probably not going to need building permit reviews, but they would still need to have security measures in place that were reviewed by the police department, and building and fire would certainly look at the situation there.
If they're going, so if they're building a property from scratch, they wouldn't need a building permit?
No. The ordinance allows emergency shelters to be placed in open spaces. So in other words, it doesn't have to be inside of a building. So the example of that is the emergency shelter that Betty Chin has at Washington and Coster Streets. So there's no building on that side. It's just a city parking lot, and they bring their tents in and pitch those overnight. They have a place to store their stuff, and then during the daytime they leave.
Right, okay. Any other questions for staff? If my question, if it sounds like that if we make any changes to this, it's got to go back to the Coastal Commission.
Yes, if either the planning commission recommends to council and council accepts those changes, if they are substantial changes, then the whole thing would have to go back to the Coastal Commission.
So make amendment proposals carefully, commissioners. Any other questions for staff before we open a public hearing?
No.
All right, so we'll.
It's not a public hearing. It's just public comment.
Oh. Yeah, there probably is a legal difference between public hearing and public comment, but it escapes me. So with that in mind, we'll open up a public comment period, and we have no members of the public here, but as the recording will prove, we did open it, and almost as quickly we'll close it and remove the item back to the commissioners for a motion and discussion and a vote.
Okay, Jeff, I'll move the planning commission adopt a resolution recommending the city council approve the modifications to the emergency shelter LCP amendment certified by the California Coastal Commission.
I'll second that.
And that was Tiana, I think. Is that correct?
It was Meredith.
It's Meredith. Meredith seconds Joe's motion. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays?
Aye.
All the ayes have it, unanimous. No nays whatsoever. The motion passes. All right, next item on our agenda is similar. It's the Crowley Site Local Coastal Program Amendment. We can start with the staff report again, Ms. Kristen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Hopefully everybody can see the Crowley site on the screen.
Yep.
So this project number uses LCP 18-0001 and LCP 19-0001. And you may or may not remember, this came to you in 2018 when we were proposing to change both the zoning and the land use designation on the Crowley site. And then we came back to you in 2019 and asked you to add a Q qualified combining zone district to the zoning on the site. So the site is located on Hillficker Lane. It is between the wastewater treatment plant and the Humboldt Bay Fire Training Facility. And we are here in almost the very southwest portion of the city, down south of the Bayshore Mall. And the site is here. And zooming in a little bit closer, in between the treatment plant and the fire training facility is what we refer to as the Crowley site. So as I mentioned before, the LCP amendment with modifications to create a new land use designation was approved by the Coastal Commission. And it will also alter the limitations and uses allowed under the Q combining district. So the Coastal Commission actually created a whole new land use designation for the site. It's a mixed use limited designation. It allows only limited intensity, temporary residential, commercial, and public facility uses that can be developed consistent with the LCP requirements and are located on parcels with significant coastal resource and or coastal hazard constraints. So this is the list of uses that were originally proposed in the Q qualified zone district for the Crowley site. The commission felt that the additional language on the public utility use was redundant. They also felt that commercial vehicle storage created too much of a hazard in the event of a tsunami. So both of those have been deleted from the language. Then at the request of the city, the commission did add in emergency shelters to the use of to the list of uses that are allowed in the Q zone, and that's shown there. The Q zone goes on to further place limitations on the types of uses and the manner in which they're operated on the site. And the Coastal Commission made some changes to that language also. They added in language regarding flood risks in 2 of the sections, and that's shown there on your screen. And then they added in 3 whole new sections, indicating that only 1 use can be allowed on the site at one time, with the exception that buried public utilities can be allowed there with another use. They added a requirement that a soil and groundwater management plan has to be prepared and provided to the city prior to any ground disturbance. And we also need to include a project specific buffer reduction analysis for any types of uses that are proposed on the site. So all of those were added into the Q zone limitations. So staff again is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend the council adopt the modifications that were already certified by the Coastal Commission. And again, there's an agenda or a motion on your screen for tonight.
Any questions from the commissioners for staff?
So this MLU or MUL is just for this site? Is that what's going on?
Yes, at this point in time, it only applies to the Crowley site. It is actually available for us to use on other sites if it's appropriate. And we would have to go through a similar situation or similar process again to change that land use designation on another site.
Okay.
And I was a little confused. Did the Coastal Commission add that designation to their code, or did they hold a gun to our head and said, you have to adopt it to your code?
They denied our request to change the land use designation from public to general service commercial, and they approved an amendment for the mixed use land use designation.
So it basically sounds like they're saying to us, if you will do it this way, we will approve it.
Correct.
Any other questions for staff?
Gretchen, could you go back 2 slides? You mentioned a water thing. Yeah, where's the water on that one?
A water theme?
Yeah, you mentioned water, and I read it and I can't find it.
Maybe the buffer thing? Is that what you're talking about, Rich?
I think so, yeah.
For public utilities.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm generally in favor of this item. Could we add a raspberry character, you know, a little cartoon character sticking his thumb out at his tongue out at the Coastal Commission? You know, just could we add that in here just for artistic license? No? Okay, fine.
I think at this point in
support
time,
it anyway.
the city and potential future applicants are just glad that this is going through.
Yes. All right, any other questions for staff?
Nope.
All right, so we'll open up a public comment period. There's still no members of the public here, is that correct?
That's
So
correct.
we will close our public comment period and return the item back to the commission for a motion and a discussion and a vote. I don't think Tiana has her name in the minutes yet. So let's give her first dibs at this. Miss Tiana, are you there?
I'm here, but I'm having technical difficulties at my house.
Oh, okay.
Suddenlink in this area, so things are cutting
get-
in and out.
You get ready to second it real quick when somebody else moves. Who wants to move?
Here I go. I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending the city's council approving and modifications of the Crowley site LCP amendment certified by the California Coastal Commission.
I second.
Yes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I
I
think that's 5. Any nays? Any noes? No noes, no nays. The motion carries unanimously. Excellent. Next item on our agenda is reports and communications. Reports and communications, Ms. Kristen, do you have anything for us?
I do not.
Okay. Anybody else have any reports or communications? I have a couple of thoughts. First of all, do we have any movement on our multifamily on city parking lot buildings that I think we sent out an RFP, is that correct?
We did, yes.
And have we gotten any proposals back?
We
Do we
did.
know when tell us all about them.
So request for proposal responses were due on September 14th. We received a total of 3 responses. One response responded for 1 site. Another response responded for 2 sites. And the third response responded for all 3 sites. So the selection panel that was appointed by the city manager reviewed all of the responses. And at the first meeting in October, council meeting in October, I believe, the panel unanimously recommended that Link Housing be awarded the project. They are the ones that propose development on all 3 of the sites. So council accepted that recommendation, and staff is working with Link Housing to start the process of negotiating a development and disposition agreement. They are proposing to lease all 3 sites from the city. Their proposal was really responsive to everything that we had in the RFP. They had a lot of good experience. They have years of experience developing low income and senior and other specialized needs housing. And they are from California, which is nice too. They are proposing to do between 4 and 6-story structures on the sites. And I don't have off the top of my head the number of units that will be at each site, but there altogether will be 104 low-income dwelling units and 3 managers units. So a total of 107 dwelling units between the 3 sites. They are going to be working on getting their design review done so that they can go out for funding February of next year. They're hoping to begin construction in 2022 on the Myrtle Avenue and the 8th and G Street sites. About a month after they start that construction, they'll start on the 6th and M site with final construction dates in 2023, fall of 2023 and early 2024.
6th and M is right there next door, right?
It's a block away.
Okay.
And then we have had some interest from some other folks on some of the other city-owned properties. So there's no requirement that somebody come to us to do development on a city-owned site through an RFP process. If they're interested in doing a development, they can just approach us. And so we are working with a couple of other potential developers on other sites. So we are moving forward with that.
Link is L-I-N-K.
L-I-N-C.
L-I-N-C. And could you email me or anyone else that wants to see them, the proposals for the 3 different sites?
Yes.
Excellent. So you will do that sometime later this week?
Yes.
Wonderful. Any other questions on that particular item from other council commissioners? All right. Other reports and communications. We had a kind of a lengthy discussion last meeting about some parliamentary issues and Brown Act and all that kind of stuff. Last month, I'd requested that we have city attorney here to explain Brown Act and some other legal issues that we talked about. And so I talked with Kristen about that, and she talked with Pam Powell, I believe. And she said that next year in January, we're going to have a training for us and other boards and commissions in the city that will go over the Brown Act specifically. Did I get that right, Kristen? You're muted. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Yes, you did.
Excellent. And then there were a couple of other items that I felt like we needed to review. At one point, Joe, some questions arose. You raised a question of, can we discuss something without a motion? Do we have to make a motion to discuss things and stuff like that? Kristen sent everyone, I think, a Robert's Rules of Order packet. It's got a Robert's Rules of cheat sheet on it. Ignore the little yellow notes there. And then behind it, it's got some more detail and stuff. And so Robert's Rules generally require motions to, you have to move something in order to speak. However, with small bodies like ours, there are, those rules tend to get really, really relaxed. And that's normal and fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But generally speaking, if you want to accomplish any business, if you want to accomplish something, you need to tell us what you want to accomplish. For example, on the Robert's Rules sheet at the bottom of the first little box there, to introduce business, there's a whole list of things you can do: to adjourn, to recess, to complain about noise, or whatever. But to introduce business or to introduce an action of some kind, you have to have a motion. And sometimes we'd even call it that. Someone would say, well, why can't we do this? And that's why I might ask, is that a motion? Well, I don't want to move. I just want to know if we can do it. Well, if you want us to take an action, it is a motion, whether you call it a motion or not. And then you notice there that it requires a second. And that's all a second is someone else saying, I think that motion's a good idea. I think that idea is a good idea. The purpose of a second is to make sure that the idea isn't just one person's pet project that no one else cares about. If you got at least 2 people that think it's a good idea, the mover and the second, then that's enough people for the whole body to consider it. So that's generally how motions and seconds work. And does that make sense to everybody? Is there any other questions about that?
Well, Jeff, like you said, the small bodies, it's usually more relaxed. I think the second thing, that having a second, that kind of retards the effort, because then you're trying to focus on one particular idea. My feeling is, as our commission, since the only time we can get together to basically spitball this stuff is when we're in this room or on this Zoom together. And when you're spitballing stuff, making a motion, trying to get somebody to second your idea just so you can talk about it, that retards the ability for people to basically have a discussion. My feeling is, we're not the city council, but we should be more like a group of 5 people just sitting around a dinner table having a discussion. And yeah, we're going to have arguments. And I do apologize for getting a little cranky during these arguments. That's unfortunately my disposition, and that's why you're such a good chairman, Jeff, because you're very even. I wouldn't do very well, but that's my feeling, is that by just having everybody just cut loose with their ideas back and forth, you're going to get more informative discussion and more ideas flowing in a shorter period of time, instead of trying to have it to dispose of the motion after we talk about it and think, oh, that isn't a good idea. So basically, and actually in Arcata, they actually do sit around a table. They do not sit up at the dais for the Planning Commission in Arcata. They all just sit around the table. Even some of the people who were there as visitors sit around the table, and everybody's spitballing ideas and going around. And so, my feeling is that's a better way for a small city, small commission to do this kind of stuff, especially since a lot of us are not professionals. On the county planning commission, they got a lot more guys. A lot of the guys are in the profession, and so they know what everybody's talking about, and it's a little bit easier for them to get to the heart of the matter. But that's just my side of the story. So that's and that way you stay within the Brown Act too, because that way you don't have people having side conversations out on the street and stuff like that, which I really don't like. And even 2 people can get together, but I really don't even like to have that happen. I prefer just to do it all right out there in the open and have it on the minutes, and anybody can look at it if they want to. And that's always been my deal, the transparency thing with the city, and that's where I get real hot.
I'm with you on the transparency 100%, but I don't think we've got legally. I don't think we've got I want to keep things relational and creative, but legally, we've got to run by a certain minimum standard of Robert's rules because it's in the law, it's in the city code. So I try to be flexible there, but we'll see. Any other thoughts, Rich, Tiana, Meredith? Thanks for the kind words, by the way, Joe. I appreciate it. Any other thoughts on that particular item, everybody?
And I do also want to formally apologize to the staff for being cranky with you. No, you're all great people. You're doing great work.
And he has some candy he'll give you afterwards.
Another item that kind of came up was, Rich, you raised some concerns about me, and you've raised this several times over the years. You don't feel it's right when I tell people how I want to vote before the vote. Did I state that correctly?
Yes, you did state that correctly.
Would you like to elaborate on your concern there?
No, not at this time. I just don't think the chairman, you do 2 things that I don't agree with. You say, you tell people how you're going to vote, which could influence some people. I think the chairman should be the very last to vote. The other thing you do is, I think before you call for a vote, you should repeat exactly the motion that you're voting on, which we don't. You just say, can we move into Joe's vote? And I think the chairman it's his duty to repeat exactly what we're going to vote on every matter.
2 items.
Right.
You are correct on the second one. The chairman should restate the motion before we vote. You're absolutely correct. I try to do that, particularly on complicated issues. I will endeavor to try harder on every single vote. So we can agree on that. On the first issue, I I think it's common for all of us, each of us as commissioners, to often describe how we feel about a proposal. I mean, just in our last meeting when this came up, we're talking about the tree ordinance. Joe announced at the very beginning when he started describing it that he hated the tree. He hated that. So that was an example of him, kind of basically telling us how he was going to vote.
Yeah, but he's
I think we,
not the chair.
I think we all do that on occasion.
Fine,
uh,
the chair.
Occasionally I do it as well. I did it last meeting. You objected. The reason I did it was because there was a situation where we had 4 people and we needed 3 yes votes to accomplish anything. And there were several different ways we could go. So in that case, I did it in order to try to help everyone, and myself and everybody else, kind of understand where our options were regarding moving forward on the proposal. So I try to be sensitive. I try to be sensitive. If I felt like in the past, Rich, you've complained sometimes about me voting last on items, but
Yeah,
I'll
but
try to.
wait, we got around that, which I did complain on, but we got around that and we've gotten away from it by having by not being called on to vote. By just having a hands vote. That way we weren't influenced by the chairman, how he was going to vote. Everyone in favor, raise their hand. Boom, we raise our hand. We don't know how you're going to vote till your hand's up. So we had that discussion before, and that's how we got around waiting for the chair to say, I'm going to vote this way, or say, I have the last vote, so I'm going to influence it. We've gotten away from this part here. The other thing, now that you bring it up, wait a second, because when we start to get a list of things I don't like, the list gets big. It was, I think that at the last meeting, and this is exactly what Joe is discussing, how we can have just little discussions like this without making motions and stuff. I think at the last meeting, Tiana said she didn't want to vote because she was waiting. She wanted Meredith here to make a vote, and we all voted yes. Let's do that. But in reviewing that in my mind, I think that that was a bad vote on our part, because that's why we have a quorum. We need 3 people to vote it. We shouldn't have voted that way. We shouldn't have said we need everyone here to vote because we want XYZ person here. That was not a good vote for us to do. I mean, not the way to do that. The quorum is in the minutes, 3 votes and it wins. We didn't need that vote. That's it. I want some.
First of all, I'm honored that you think my Jedi mind powers are so strong that my words can influence the way all of you strong-willed people would vote. I'm flattered to think that.
Well, not necessarily.
Secondly, you're right that the chair, traditionally, the chair is the last one to vote, or oftentimes doesn't vote at all, because the chair is of any group, be it a small group or a large group, is supposed to maintain a certain appearance, if not actual sense of neutrality. So I try to be neutral. You let everyone speak, let everyone share their thoughts. There are occasions when I deviate from that. The chair, as a member of the body, has the same rights that the other members of the body have, except, interestingly enough, in our city council. Our mayor is a separate elected official. The mayor only votes to break ties. I don't know if you've noticed that, but the reason is the mayor's not a member of the city council. Mayor's a separate office. And our commission, we're all commissioners, and so I am one of you. We are a brotherhood of planning commissioners together, and that means I have the same rights as you guys, and you really have the same rights as I do. It's just someone's got to lead the meeting. And so occasionally I will, in an effort not to influence you, but in an effort to try to help the meeting figure out, the group figure out where it needs to go, I will share what my thoughts are. Those are never meant as an effort to influence you, but as an effort just to kind of let everybody know where I stand so that we can all plan accordingly. Any other thoughts or comments on this stuff?
Well, actually, Jeff, my term is ending at the end of December. The mayor called me and she's not reappointing me. So I just wanted to let you all know that December will be my last meeting. And I just wanted to say it's been a pleasure working with all you guys, and you staff people are great. And I wish you luck in the coming year. And hopefully my replacement will not be as cranky as I am.
We appreciate your service, Joe, and we look forward. You can't skip the December meeting. Just
No, don't worry, I'll be here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions on these particular items or on reports and communications in general?
I just have a comment,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, I think, first and foremost, Commissioner Benito, I appreciate you apologizing to staff. I think that's, it's really hard to say I'm sorry at times, especially in a public forum, and I respect that a lot. So thank you for just addressing that, because, that gives me a lot of respect for you. And as far as, I think it is in our right as commissioners, especially when there are really intense topics that we feel so passionately about because we love our community, and just, trying to come to the best decision in cohesion with staff, and, forward on things to the city council that have meaning and substance. I don't think it's a negative thing to want or ask for a whole panel, of our commissioners to be there during especially hot button issues or things that, obviously, Joe, you felt really passionate about it, and I think that's in our right as individuals to ask for more thought or to ask for a pause and to come back to the table, with a clear head to vote on things, especially when we're trying to make rational decisions, not based on personal feelings. So, that's just my thought about it and my thought process as to, all of this conversation.
I agree with you 100%, Tiana. Meredith, have any thoughts?
No, I wasn't at the last meeting, and I didn't watch it, unfortunately. So this is all news to me, but what a respectful conversation this is, and enlightening for me. And to you, Joe, I'm sorry to hear you will be leaving the commission. It's been a pleasure. You've taught me a lot.
It was nice sitting next to you.
Joe, this sincerely is a shock to me that you're not being reappointed. It doesn't surprise me that the mayor would do something like that. But
Well, I'm not blaming her, Rich. I love the mayor, but the other thing too is, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to talk on you.
you are very valuable to this committee. Thank you for your help.
Well, thank you. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thanks very much.
You bet. So any other reports and communications? Because the next item on our agenda is adjournment.
How are you going to vote?
Wouldn't want to influence you unduly, Rich. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Think that's unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.